Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the surprisingly intense world of industrial temperature measurement. If you're studying engineering or process control, figuring out exactly how we capture and quantify heat in a chaotic, high-stakes industrial environment is absolutely crucial. We aren't just talking about reading a thermometer outside your window here. We're talking about the precision instruments that keep massive chemical plants and manufacturing processes running safely and efficiently.
So, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll hit topic 2.1, the language of temperature. Then we'll cover 2.2 with inside expansion thermometers and the pressure spring system. After that, we'll dive into topic 2.3 for vapor-actuated thermometers, and finally wrap up with system quirks and errors.
All right, let's kick things off with section 1, the language of temperature, where we define our baseline of heat. Because, before we can build an instrument to measure heat, we all have to agree on how we actually quantify it. At the very foundation of all our measurements is the thermodynamic temperature scale. You see, early temperature scales were kind of all over the place, entirely based on things like how much a specific metal bar expanded or how a particular gas behaved. But Lord Kelvin suggested this ideal scale that is completely independent of the working substance. Instead, it's based purely on the availability of energy, defining an absolute zero where literally no more heat can be extracted.
From that thermodynamic ideal, we get the four major industrial temperature scales you absolutely need to know. We have Fahrenheit and centigrade, which you probably use every single day, and their absolute counterparts, Rankine and Kelvin. Notice how their standard ice points and steam points look wildly different on paper, even though they represent the exact same thermal reality. That's because while centigrade and Fahrenheit use pretty arbitrary 0 points based on water freezing or salt mixtures, Kelvin and Rankine start at true absolute zero.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how these arbitrary and absolute scales visually map right onto each other. You can literally trace a horizontal line across the freezing point of water and watch it hit 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 degrees centigrade, 273.16 Kelvin, and 491.7 Rankine. As future engineers, you have to be totally fluent in converting between these units, because international process plants will constantly use a mix of them depending on exactly where the equipment came from.
Moving right along to Chapter 2, Inside Expansion Thermometers. We have our theoretical language of heat sorted out, but how do we physically measure it on a fast-paced factory floor? Well, we use expansion thermometers. The operating principle here is elegantly simple, but it relies on some really precise physics. It essentially happens in 4 steps. First, the surrounding process heat transfers through a metal bulb. Second, this heat causes what we call cubical expansion, or basically volumetric expansion, of the fluid trapped inside. Third, because that fluid is expanding inside a totally sealed system, it forces its way up a thin capillary tube, driving up the pressure. And finally, that heat literally becomes physical motion, as the pressure hits a receiving element which uses mechanical linkages to move a pointer on a dial. So, if you ever need to sketch out an industrial liquid expansion or pressure spring thermometer for an exam, just remember the big 3 components. You've got the metal bulb that's inserted directly into the process, that's your sensor. Then you have the capillary tubing, which can sometimes be incredibly long, acting as your transmission line. And finally, you have the receiving element at the operator station, which acts as your indicator.
Let's zoom in a bit closer on that third component, the receiving element. Section 3, the pressure spring system. How exactly does a change in fluid volume mechanically turn a dial? The secret sauce lies in these brilliantly designed pieces of metal. What we have here are metal tubes with a relatively thin wall, bent into a curve but with an elliptical cross-section. We have the standard C-shaped Bourdon tube, the spiral, and the helix. When the expanding fluid from the capillary rushes into these tubes, the internal pressure pushes outward, trying to force that flat, elliptical cross-section into a perfect circle. As it tries to become rounder, the entire coiled tube is physically forced to uncoil and straighten out. It's so cool. Let's look at how this builds into a complete recording instrument. Notice the spiral spring sitting right in the center, connected directly to the capillary. As the internal pressure increases and the spiral unwinds, the free outer end physically pulls on a metal link attached to a pen arm. This sweeps the pen in a wide arc across a circular chart, recording the temperature continuously. It's a beautifully simple, purely mechanical translation of thermal energy into readable data.
All right, let's shift gears to Chapter 4, hitting syllabus topic 2.3, vapor-actuated thermometers. We've talked about liquid expanding, but there's an entirely different, highly specialized tool used out there in the industry.
Okay, let's dive into this. What happens when we use vapor pressure instead of standard liquid expansion? Well, instead of filling the whole system solidly with liquid, we only partially fill it with a volatile liquid, and we let the rest of the space fill up with its vapor. A vapor-actuated thermometer operates strictly on the principle that every liquid has a specific vapor pressure for any given temperature. The pressure in the entire system depends entirely on the temperature at the free surface of the liquid inside the bulb. Because of this, you can choose very specific filling media to achieve really broad operational ranges. We're talking anywhere from -50 degrees all the way up to 600 degrees Fahrenheit. The main trade-off, though? Vapor systems generally produce smaller mechanical forces to move the pen than a solid liquid expansion system does. But vapor pressure has a very distinct quirk. Look at the totally nonlinear chart it produces. The pressure doesn't just increase steadily, it ramps up way faster at higher temperatures. Because of this, the graduations on a vapor-actuated thermometer dial are super compressed at the low end and get much wider and easier to read at the high end. Engineers actually use this to their advantage, selecting a system where their normal operating temperature sits perfectly in that widely spaced, highly readable upper portion of the scale. Pretty smart, right? Which brings us to our final section, Chapter 5, System Quirks and Errors. Because in a textbook, everything works perfectly. But in a real industrial plant, physics creates challenges that can seriously mess with our precision data. First up, we have something called the head effect. Imagine your temperature bulb is installed on a pipe high up on the second floor of a plant, but the actual recording dial is all the way down on the ground floor. The capillary tube connecting them is totally full of liquid. Well, that tall column of liquid creates its own hydrostatic pressure, physically pushing down on the receiving spring just because of gravity. If you don't calibrate the instrument to account for this specific elevation difference, your temperature reading is going to be artificially high.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next challenge, the cross-ambient effect in vapor thermometers. Imagine the ambient temperature around your capillary tube is, say, 70 degrees. If the process bulb heats up from 50 degrees to 100 degrees, it has to cross that 70-degree ambient mark. When that happens, the physical liquid inside the bulb literally has to migrate into the cooler capillary and then vaporize back in the hotter bulb. This massive shifting of fluids takes physical time, causing a huge temporary lag in your temperature reading. You can actually see the flat line on the graph here before it finally recovers.
Another purely mechanical headache to watch out for is the dead zone. Because these thermometers rely on physical springs, links, and pens, there is always going to be starting friction. A very tiny change in temperature might not generate enough mechanical force to overcome the friction in the pen's bearings. So the temperature changes in reality, but your pen stays completely dead still. This is especially true in vapor and gas systems where the operational forces are just much smaller compared to the massive force of solid liquid expansion.
And finally, here is a massive pro tip for when you're actually out in the field. Always remember this rule of thumb. Your thermometer is only as fast as the heat transfer allows. The response time isn't just about the dial, it's dictated by the thermal capacitance, the thermal conductivity, and the film coefficients of the fluid surrounding the bulb. Basically, if you stick a thermometer in a slow-moving, thick oil, it's going to respond much, much slower than if it were sitting in high-velocity steam.
So that wraps up our explainer. We've decoded the language of absolute and relative scales, broken down the physical mechanics of expansion and vapor-actuated instruments, and explored real-world quirks like the head effect and dead zones. So I leave you with this. With so many variables, fluids, and environmental quirks to account for, how will you apply these concepts to select the exact right system for your next design? Keep that in the back of your mind as you head into the field. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today.